James with Olympus Controls, and today I'm going to review how to integrate the SICK Inspector camera with the Universal Robots UR5. Currently you're seeing my setup that I have in the lab here. I've got the robot mounted to an aluminum table, and I also have the camera mounted to the same table, and it's mounted above the robot. It's looking down at the calibration grid. And I'm also outputting the video of the teach minute to a television. So the beginning portion of this video will cover setting up the camera using the SOPA's engineering tool on the PC.
Okay, so the first thing we'll do to configure the PIM60 with the Universal Robot is actually configure the camera. So we'll go into SOPA's, which is SICK's configuration software. We'll launch that here. Okay, and as the software launches, we'll start to see any SICK devices that I have connected to my network. Alright, and my Inspector PIM60 pops up. I'll hit the drop down arrow and say open the device window. And we're currently seeing what the camera is seeing. So the first thing we'll do is configure the communications of the camera. So I'll say click on the Inspector PIM60 at the top and go down to Interfaces and I/O Settings. We want to make sure that Ethernet RAW is selected in this drop down menu, as well as these top three checkboxes are selected. And then next we'll go to what we've got here. Next we'll go to the Web Server tab, and we'll make sure that we have port 80 selected and that these other two checkboxes are selected as well. And then finally we'll go to the Ethernet RAW tab, and we'll select TCP and make sure that port 2114 is shown. Okay. Once these are done, we'll hit apply. Say OK. And now we'll actually teach our object. So I'm going to place our background in here that we're going to use in the application. And I'll place the part that we're going to be looking for. And this is just a typical USB flash drive. So I'm going to teach a reference object. Say object locator. And I will draw a rectangle or a box around my object. Let's hit enter and say OK. Now on the next step, I'm going to configure the outputs and configure the string that's going to be sent to the robot such that I'm able to parse out the X, Y, and rotation of the object. So we'll go into the again the Inspector PIM60 and go down to Ethernet results. The Ethernet result output. Here we go. Okay, and we want to make sure that we have the number of decimals set to at least 3, and that we're using radians and millimeters, and that we have this checkbox selected, align coordinates. Okay, so right now you should have your output configuration set up like this. And lastly, we'll format the output string to send to the robot. Now, this is where you're actually building the output string to send, so it's very important that you get the syntax correct. So I've actually got the formatting here in Notepad. I'm just going to copy and paste. And I will validate my output string, essentially test it. So here we are showing the output coordinates of the object I'm detecting. So once this is validated, I will hit apply and OK. I'll put the camera back into run mode, say yes, save to flash, OK. And now I'll say device and go offline. Okay. After this step, we're done with the SOPA software, so we could exit it out. I'm just going to minimize it for now, and we'll jump back over to the teach pendant.
Coming back to the teach pendant now, we will calibrate, align the camera's coordinate system with that of the robot. So before you do this process, you would need to have the URCap for the SICK inspector installed onto the robot, as well as have the IP address of the robot set up. So you'd go into Setup Robot, and you'd have your URCap on a flash drive and install it here. And in the Setup Network, this is where you go to configure the IP address of the robot. If you're not sure how to do either of those things, you can go to UR's website on their how-to section, and they have several great resources on how to install URCaps as well as set up the network of the robot. So once you have those two processes done, you could then go into the installation tab of your robot, and once the URCap is installed, you'll now see an option on the left called SICK Inspector. So if you were to click on that, then you will be brought into the general settings tab of your camera. So right now we are connected, and we don't have so right now we are connected, and if we were to go into live view, we would see what the camera is currently seeing, as well as the outline of the object that we have taught. So if I move my hand in front of the camera, we're going to see that on the teach pendant. We go back into settings. I'm sorry, not settings. We'll go into calibration now and actually start to calibrate the camera. So we'll just select start calibration. We'll enter the grid size of our calibration grid, and we'll select done here. So this process right now could take 30 to 60 seconds. Give it some time, be patient. Once the radio button on the left drops down to the next selection, that's how you'll know that this step is done. Okay. So now we'll actually go to where we're moving the robot into the relative locations shown on the teach pendant. So I'm going to move the camera now, give you an idea of what we're doing. And this will make more sense once you have your calibration grid printed out. But right now we're going to move the robot to where the TCP is on top of the crosshair A. And right now I'm just using the controls on the teach pendant. You could put the robot into free drive and manually move the robot in that manner as well. Bring my speed down a little bit. Okay, so now I've got the robot TCP over point A of the calibration grid. So I'll go back to my teach pendant output, and in the installation process now I'll say done, and the URCap will have me go down now to move the robot into crosshair B. So I will do that for all 4 crosshairs, and we'll speed up the video here so we move through this process more quickly. Okay. And after you move the robot over crosshair D and say done, you will say send coordinates to the sensor, and the calibration was successful. So now that we've gone through the calibration process, we can go into a program. And here I've actually got a program set up, so I'll just select SICK Inspector. And I'm going to move my robot to a home position that I have created. And this home position will be a position that is where the robot is out of the field of view of the camera. Okay. And what you would do next is actually add a URCap to say SICK Inspector, or add a SICK Inspector or a camera locate node. So I will add this node, and for now I'll just suppress my original camera node. And here is where we'll actually train the part, or I'm sorry, not train the part, but tell the robot what to do in the program once we have found our part. So now I have added the background as well as the USB hub that we're going to be looking for into our field of view. So on the camera node, I will say get position, and the coordinates that pop up are the coordinates that the camera found of that object. And now I'm going to move the robot into position to where it should pick up, or where it should go once the camera has told the robot where that object is. So here I'll adjust the camera one more time. And what I want to do, obviously, is pick up the part. So I'll go to my Move tab, make sure my gripper is open. Okay. I'll rotate my end effector so I pick up the workpiece from the sides. Okay, close my grippers to make sure that that's where I want to pick up at. Okay, so I'll probably back up some. And now I'll say set position. So looking back at my teach pendant, I'll say set position. And now my pick point offsets have been created. So what that is doing is creating essentially a relative waypoint that the robot will go to based on the found coordinates of the camera. I can also come here and configure how I'm going to approach the part. So I can increase my acceleration, or I'm sorry, I can increase my speed, my acceleration of how I move to that part. I can also go into my advanced settings and say I want to restrict my rotation to plus or minus 90 degrees, so I don't really care which side I pick up this particular workpiece on, I just want to make sure I grab it. Okay. And after I configured each of those moves, or after I configured the move to camera pose node, then I can add in the rest of my motion into my program. So here on the left, as you can see, I've got a gripper close where I actually pick up the part after going down to it. I have a depart move, and then I have an approach my place position move. So my depart move is just a relative move, so I will go straight up after I pick up the part. Okay, So now we will run through the application. Okay, and that concludes the video on how to integrate the SICK PIM60 camera with the Universal Robots UR5. This is Cody James with Olympus Controls, and thank you.